Hi again. Just a probably a little bit more of an in-depth look at one of my favourite chords, the chord of G13th. Now, following on from what I was talking about with the construction of the E9th chord, if you take G, add a B, a D, and an F, obviously you've got G7th. If you then go up another two notes from the F to add the A, you get the G9th. If you go up another third, another two notes, A, B, C, and then if you go up another two from C, D, E, you've got the chord of G13th. There's only one problem with that, and that is that by using what we call tertial harmony, i.e. we're constructing the chord by putting one interval of a third on top of another, we've actually ended up with every single natural note. So we might as well just done that. Because we've got G, B, D, F, A, C, and E. So we've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, so that's every natural note there because of using, as I say, what we call tertial harmony, and it's too thick, too cumbersome. So we need to remove some of the notes, some of the less important notes. Well, the notes that are important are obviously the G. We'll put that into the bass. The B makes the chord major or minor. That has to stay. The fifth D we can get rid of. The seventh has to stay because it's the only by having a seventh that notes of the 9th and the 11th and the 13th are classed as they are. In other words, you have to have a 7th before you can have a 9th above that. Otherwise, obviously, A by itself is simply a second above G. So we have to have the F, but we don't actually need the 9th or the 11th. We do need the 13th. So if we keep the 13th E and the F and the B and the G, that's what we've ended up with. Okay. Let's put the G in the bass. The 7th is F. The 13th is E. Again, we have to keep them apart. You can't really, well, you can occasionally hear that, but it's not such a as effective as taking the F, the 7th of the G13th, keeping it as the bottom note, making the 13th the top note, and putting the B. As I say, the B is really important because it makes the chord major or minor in the middle there, and then we've got G13th. Now this is the interesting thing about this chord. When we started off, we had a chord that was built by putting a third on top of one another. Now what we've ended up with are three notes that are all a fourth apart. F to B is four notes. It's what we call an augmented fourth. B to E, a perfect fourth. But we've got a chord now that's built in fourths. It's known as quartal harmony when you build a chord in fourths. So that's G. Now in my other video I was talking about the fact that you can change the bass note. If you go up or down a tritone, which is exactly half an octave, tritone, literally 3 tones or 6 semitones. So exactly halfway between G and G is of course the D flat. So if you do a D flat with this same G13th chord, we've now got the chord of D flat 7th with the sharpened 9th, or as I say, my pal Keith, he never refers to them as sharpened 9ths, he always refers to them as flattened 10ths. And the reason why he does that is because if you take, let's say for example, that E7th, sharpened 9th, as I call it, you've basically got a situation where you've got an E chord that's got both the major third, G sharp, and the minor third, G natural. Okay, so it's a mixture of major and minor at the same time. The third, the interval of a third, above E, as I say, is G. If it's an octave and a third, then it's a 10th. So as I say, instead of it being the ordinary 10th. He refers to it as a flattened 10th because the G sharp has moved down to a G. You've got that combination. You've got that combination of G sharp and G natural. The G sharp being the third of the chord, the D being the 7th, and the G natural, or as it's strictly known as, F double sharp. When you refer to it as a sharpened 9th, it's an F double sharp. If you refer to it as a flattened 10th, then it's simply a G natural. Okie dokie. So the every time you take a 13th chord, such as a G, drop down a tritone, you'll get the 7th of the flattened with the sharpened 9th of that new bass note. If we were then to drop down everything a semitone, that would obviously bring us to C, 7th with a sharpened 9th. But again, if we change the bass note and go a tritone up or down, it doesn't matter, it's the same distance, you get to F sharp, F 13th, which then if you drop that down, semitone everything to F 13th. And I think the first time I ever came across these sort of jazz progressions was actually in a Harry Stoneham book of the tune Lonesome Road, and at the end of the jazz solo he uses these chords F 13th, D 7th sharp and 9th, to A flat 13th, to G 13th, to D flat 7th sharp and 9th, to C 7th sharp and 9th, to F sharp 13th, and it sounds really okay. I actually quite like the G 13th going to the E 7th sharp 9th, to the A 13th, to the D 7th sharp 9th, and you can actually incorporate that with, say, there's that tune by the Simon Two Minds jig, which goes. Bass note. Okay, so hopefully that explains a little bit more in depth about the way that the chords are constructed. As I say, it's very important to remember that the reason that these chords, the higher chords of the 9th and obviously 11th, 9th, 11th and 13th, it's because you've got to have the 7th there in the first place. Without it, it would not be a you cannot class it as a 9th and an 11th. As I say, if you go from G up to the 7th, F, that's 7 notes up. Any note you add then is classed as 9, 11 and then 13. Obviously you probably noticed there that what we've got there is quite a nice effect. It's the F major 7th with the G bass. I particularly like that one, I must admit. And you'll probably notice that in fact just a plain F chord with the G bass gives you a nice effect as well. So I say, but you've got to have that F, because if you simply had, say, A, B and D, that's just the G chord with the added second, and that's not classed as the 9th anymore because of the absence of the 7th. So hopefully that makes sense, and well, if it doesn't, post in the comments, and I'll try and rectify if you've got any queries. Okie dokie, bye for now.